Alright, so I want to go over placing scaled views on sheets. So I'm going to scroll up here to my site plan. And right now, this site plan with just the plug, right, has a crop scope box that's associated with it. It's not cropping this particular view, but if I go to my schematics and do a flyout, and I go to my site plan here, under floor plans, right, you'll see that it is cropping this view using that scope box. So I'll come in and go to shaded in here so you can see that. The scope box is actually turned off in the schematic view. So if I come back and let's take a look at level 1 floor plan. You see this scope box here? This scope box is controlling the cropping for schematic. So if I go to level 1 schematic, you're going to see it's cropping it in a really weird way. Okay, so I'm going to come in here and go to, and it's also got a schematic view template applied to it. So I'm going to come in here and go to the schematic view template. And I'm just going to go to the visibility graphics overrides. And all the cut patterns have been changed to gray, right? So that's what's applied to that. But what we can do is if we go to level 1, we can actually move this crop box to wherever we want it and adjust it, right, to the size that we want it. And now if I go to level 1 schematic, you're going to see that that crop box is adjusted for that. Now the other thing is that the topography is actually turned off, because typically in plans in Revit there's no topography. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it back on. So you see this view template over here. You have to kind of scroll down depending on how much of your properties dialog box you can see. You can click on schematic plan and go to visibility graphics override, scroll down, and you can turn the topography on. Click OK, and click OK, and click OK, and your topography gets turned on. Now level 1, it's actually cutting through those masses, right, so we can see those masses. If we go to our site schematic, we're going to be looking down at the top of it, and it does show the topography in the site schematic. Alright, so I'll go back to my working site, and I'll actually can adjust the size of the crop box here if I want to bring that thing a little closer in. Now let's go ahead and place these views on sheets. So I'm going to place the level 1 schematic on a sheet and the site schematic on a sheet. Okay, so let's go ahead and scroll down, and let's go to our site plan 100 view. Now this already has the site itself set on this sheet, right? So this site plan 100 has that set on there, and if I go to the floor plans, it has the floor plan set on there, except it's a little skewed because I had to move the crop box to accommodate it. So if I pick this view, I can move it further onto the sheet. Now if this view was not on this sheet, I could delete it, come up here to my schematic, level 1, and place it on the sheet. Now I have a guide grid turned on that represents the size of this sheet. There's also a title block on here, a minimal title block. There is a blank title block that you can use if you don't want to use a title block at all. This is a 24 by 36 sheet, right? So it's quite a large sheet. This is an 1/8 inch size plan of this, right? So you can see 1/8 inch here. If I were to come over here and change this to 1/4 inch, it would get very large. or if I come over here and change this to something smaller, like 1/16 inch, it would get significantly smaller. So if I really wanted an 11 by 17 sheet for this, I could then pick my title block and change it to an 11 by 17. Now the guide grid is going to stay the same size. I do have a guide grid for an 11 by 17, which is the guide grid 2. So if I come into my view and scroll down and go to guide grid 2, it'll update to that 11 by 17, and you can kind of move it into place. Whoops. Alright, so that the 11 by 17 is still coincident with the sheet. Alright, now this viewport scope box is a little bit big for that 11 by 17 sheet, so you can go back to your level 1 and adjust that scope box in, right, a little bit. And now if we go back to our sheet, you can see how that box has gotten a little smaller. Okay, so let's go ahead and place the site plan again. So if I delete this, you can come up and you can place your schematic site out here on a 24 by 36. If you wanted it to be on 11 by 17, again you can pick the title block, go to 17 by 11, you can see that down there, and then if I pick this, or if I go to the view, I can change the guide grid to a guide grid 2, and it needs a little bit of adjustment to make it fit to that 11 by 17 sheet. Right, that's okay, we just adjust it up to there, and then we can pick this, and instead of 1 to 30, probably have to make it about half its size, so we'll go 1 to 60. That might fit. It's close, but ooh, very close. Now the one thing that happens is that the view title doesn't change, it comes in with the original setting, so sometimes it's kind of just easier to delete and drag it back on because it'll resize that view for you. I don't know, there's some quirky things. If that's too big for you, you can come in and go down to 1 to 80, right? Or if you want to try 1/64, that's pretty good. Again, you can select that and just change the view type to title only if you want to, and then move that wherever you want it. And now you've got a sheet with a site on it, right? And let's say you wanted to put a site section on here, or maybe an elevation of the site. Wouldn't be terribly informative, but let's do a site section. So I'll go to my working site, right, and you can see where that crop box is. You can go to view and section, and we'll just cut a section right through there, right? So there's that site section. You can move this guy in a little bit to that. Now sometimes, and this is a little bit of an advanced concept, but you can double click on this and it will take you into that section, right? So there's that section. Here's the site section. Here's the crop box for the site. You can actually come in, and for this section you can come in and assign to this section that crop box, so it will always crop at that size. So you see the scope box. If I come in here and pick scope box site, it automatically crops to that section, right? So again, if I go to none, right, it still resets itself. Let me Control Z back, see if it'll do it. Yeah, so here's the original view range for that section. If I come in and select that scope box to control it, right? Then that adjusts to that section, which is actually quite nice, right? You can use these for multiple sections and you'll always get the same size. I'm going to pull these level markers sort of more into where those guys are. So that's a site section, right? And if we come up, it's uncategorized, so we can categorize it as schematic, and it'll flip it into our section building schematic. We can also right click on it and apply a template property to it, and we have section schematic, so we'll click OK. So it's not much different than what was already there, but once we have that view, we can come back down to our site plan, scroll back up, and pull our site section from our schematic where we onto the sheet, and it's way huge because it's at 1/8 of an inch. So we had the other one set at 1/64 of an inch, so let's go ahead and change it to 1/64, right? And there it is at 1/64, and there's that big view title. So I'm just going to do what I did before, which is delete it. And replace it. So if I drag that section back in, now, and you're also going to see something quite, you see how it wants to line it up? Now, one thing that's quite nice is that you'll see that this has the same, so if I go to my site schematic and I scroll down, it has scope box site on it as well, so when you place it on the sheet, they line up and they crop similarly, right? And since Revit wants to align them, if you get them aligned, then that crop will work for you and your drawings will line up. Okay. All right. You can also change this to the title only and move it out, and it will want to line up with that other one. And then you could put more site sections on here. Okay, so that's basically sheets. We went over printing previously, so I think that's about it. So I'll just stop that one.